Hi all, so here's my attempt at doing talking notes this way. So wish me luck. Here we go. So this chapter is called A Dividing Nation. Um, I'm not going to read these notes, but because you can read that yourself, I would pretty much be saying the same thing. So in the beginning of this chapter, it talks about confronting the issues of slavery. So we have the Northwest Ordinance of 1786. When this was put into place, what it did was it banned slavery north of the Ohio River. So if you look at the map above the Ohio River, you have Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and then south of the river, the states that we had were slave states, were states like Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi. Those are all your slave states, and everyone was cool with that, right? Until 1819, Alabama and Missouri both applied for statehood, and they both wanted to be slave states. And everyone was kind of cool with Alabama because looking at the map, you see it's to the south. But they were not that keen on making Missouri a slave state. And you can see why on the map here. You can see Alabama is down here on the map, which is obviously a slave state. But if you look, Missouri is up here, and you see where the Ohio River flows? I'll trace over it. So right here is where the Ohio River is. Illinois, just north of it, is a free state. Kentucky and Tennessee, those are both slave states. But if you look at Missouri, and if you continue to draw a line across, you can see that the vast majority of Missouri is above that point where the Ohio River is. So there's only a sliver of it that is south of the Ohio River. So people were saying, no, it's north of the Ohio River, so it should not be a slave state. They didn't like this because the Southerners didn't like this because they were afraid of having too many slave states going into the Louisiana Territory, I mean. So James Talmadge, he is a congressman from New York. He proposed this idea, and he said in his idea that Missouri can join the states, but they can only join as a free state. The Southerners were not cool with that. They figured that was like a states' rights kind of a thing, and the states should have the right to choose, and that's not fair for the federal government to make that decision. So then we had again in Congress this huge debate about what's a states' right versus a federal right, like kind of like all those things that we talked about in the earlier chapters. So this whole debate of what the states should be allowed to do versus what the federal government should do became a really big issue again. So what we had essentially was a deadlocked Congress because, like I said, Southerners, they were worried that if Congress was allowed to prohibit slavery happening in these states that are these newer states coming into statehood, then they were afraid of, well, if they can deny the right then what's stopping them from taking away that right for other states and other times, like if they're already a state? So they were really protective about this whole issue of slavery. And at this point, the way it was, the North had more votes in the House of Representatives and equal rights in the Senate. So that means if the South had the votes to defeat an anti-slavery issue, that would be cool. But if Missouri came into the picture, then the North, it would swing the power to the North, and then they could vote down these slavery issues. So we ended up, the vote went to Congress, and tensions were super high. And again, like everyone expected, the House of Representatives approved the Talmadge Amendment because it had the majority from the North. However, we know each state has equal representation in the Senate. In the Senate, they could not get the majority vote that they needed to pass it into law, so the bill just died. So that is where we are. What a great cliffhanger to lead us into section 3.